So I want to definitely welcome back Jerm back to the show to continue his interview, part two on the Let's Talk Perspective podcast. And so we're just going to jump right into it as I stated. So let's kind of talk a little bit about your booking and management and some of the bands and stuff like that you dealt with at Club Summer,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay, perfect.
yeah.
So you can just tell us a little bit about that. You did say you did a lot of management and production. Was that does that mean you were kind of like in the studio with some of these bands? What are the name of some of these bands? So let's just kind of talk
Um,
about that.
well, we'll go. We'll kind of rush over the how I got started. Is back in '89. I was managing a few bands. I got to give them a shout out because it started with a band called the Ninth.
Mm,
And, I was working with Short Lived, um, Struggle, Missing Children, and Psychic Dykes. And they were all kind of eclectic, but it started at Wiener Schnitzel. I worked at Wiener Schnitzel with some of the guys in Short Lived. And then because of that, I ended up working at a club because the owner, it was a dance club, and he had done a couple shows, but it wasn't really picking up. So he was
mm,
looking for artists, and I was able to slide in as an artist because I've been an artist that we've talked about. But because of the fact that I knew the Ninth and I could possibly get them to play, I was offered, hey, we got this downstairs space. It's called the Dungeon, and I was asked if I could put a show together, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, that's right up my alley. So me being, the punk rocker and like, okay, I have a place now. This is kind of like a real job, but I'm still kind of free to do my own thing and be artistic. So I slid in and started booking shows, and
mm,
I would kind of pseudo manage, but mainly as the years went on and I was doing bigger and bigger shows, what I was more like was a mentor, and I would kind of teach people how to manage themselves as a band. And I was just trying to, for lack of better terms, just be there in any capacity. As mind you, I started this when I was 21. So as I was maturing, as my skills in management, as my skills just being a human being and dealing with a more conventional world, for lack of better terms.
mm,
I'm still a crazy artist who loves Halloween, loves everything scary, and so I had to assimilate into this world, right? And because of the fact that it's a music club and the bands that we're doing is mostly local, but I'm able to start bringing in bigger bands.
mm,
This is when it starts getting fun. So the quick story, the best one I think is I was in my closet one day and I'm drinking. I always drink cheap beer. So I'm in the closet and I'm organizing my shoes and I'm drinking. I'm probably just drunk and doing stuff just to be creative. Couldn't afford cable or a TV. My
mm.
friend calls me up and says, "Hey, I got this band. They're from Berkeley and they're called Green Day. Would you be interested in booking them at the club?" So I said, "All right, well, just send me a demo. I'll check it out, and if they're any good, I'll find a place for them because that's the way it was. I'm like, I don't care. I'll find a place for you." We all know that Green Day is huge now, but just the fact that being in there and it like literally in my closet getting this call, um, and mind you, this was probably '92, um, maybe '93. I would have to look at
Mm.
my books, uh, but so bringing them in kind of put me in the status of kind of knowing what I'm doing, getting credibility, and it just kind of grew from there. The club started getting more momentum, and yeah, so eventually, because of that, we were in downtown, and then we moved to another location because the city kicked us out.
Oh wow.
The first,
Why?
they were trying to gentrify downtown San Diego. We got this
Mm,
rock club. I mean, we made there's some bands that became huge rock stars, but then there's other bands that we're still in the stages of growing. And because one of the things that we tried to do is, if you play the dungeon for me, you had to bring 100 people. You bring 100 people, and you can go up on the main stage, and we book you with a main stage act, such as like GBH. Green Day quickly ended up upstairs. Local bands here: Unwritten Law, Sprung Monkey, Buck09, Ghoul Spoon, who now the singer of Ghoul Spoon is the singer for Smash Mouth. A lot of people cut their teeth, and we tried to, especially me, because I was the owner, but me, I was trying to teach them how to promote themselves, how to be a band.
Right.
So that's where kind of managing and all that, it was an all-encompassing thing. I had the club, I had infiltrated. I'm a punk rocker. I'm in this place that I should not be in at my age, right? So everything is really exciting. We have everything from death metal to ska. Every now and again, a local promoter around here, Makeda Dread, she had brought in some reggae acts. So we had like Yellow Man play. HR did his reggae band. Oh God, I think we have Peter Tosh. The list is just incredible. The amount of artists, because we had established ourselves in this dirty, gritty, almost Thunderdome location as a force. Oh, so Stone Temple Pilots did their video there when they just started taking off. And Oasis, when Oasis was called the Next Beatles, their tour, they went through our club as well. So we had established ourselves as a punk rock club.
Right.
We had the scary element, right? The skinheads would come through and try to cause a muck, but it's pretty well regulated because we had some very, very large Samoans who did our security. I mean, and the most sweetest people you would ever meet. 400-pound guy that would just come up to you and give you a bear hug, and he's not crushing you, but you're like, this giant man really cares about me. He cares about the club. He cares about the scene. Things like that. It's just amazing. So it sounds really scary, and it was at times to be there, but yet, as we eventually went from 18 and up to all ages, it was the place to go. It was the place to play.
So how large was these crowds? Sounds like they got pretty large. So where did you start from crowd wise? Where did you end with that?
So downstairs was, if I remember correctly, it's probably just under a couple hundred. But the floor, I think we were capped at 1,000. But we would pack it in. Like the Dead Milkman played, and I think we had 1,200 consecutively through the night.
Oh, wow.
People would leave, and then more people would come in. So we would try to cap it realistically around 1,100. That's what happens when you work for someone who kind of has some clout in the corporate. Yes. He could kind of grease some palms and, okay, fire marshal, we're literally, there's probably only 1,000 people in the building, sort of thing. I didn't get into that because back then I had tons of piercings and I wasn't as tattooed. So, and I had a mohawk like now, but it was always some color. So I wasn't the face for the public, I would stay behind the scenes and let the owner deal with that sort of thing. So then that venue, when we moved to the second one, if I had my co-host here, he would remember this. I believe we were at 1,300 in that building. But the side stage was more substantial. And the side stage, when we had a main stage shows, is where we had all the merchandise and everything set up. And again, it was the same thing. You would cut your teeth on the side stage. Mind you, this is where, funny story, when we were in downtown, and so I had to go back to doing landscaping. I had to get a real job. So I went back to landscaping. The owner of the club starts building the new club. And I wasn't going to go. I'm like, well, I wasn't making hardly any money to begin with. I was making a little bit of money now with landscaping. So he basically kind of bribed me. It's a long story, but more like threatened me. So I ended up at the new club. And I brought Blink 182, who I believe the first show might have been at Union. I would have to read their book again. I'm trying to get them on my podcast, but
Okay.
they have people and management and handlers, and they're Blink 182 is a huge band now, so it's just hard for me to get a hold of them, and I don't even have a personal number anymore unless I call their parents, and that number's probably old. But so I ended up booking Blink 182, and no, the owner didn't want him to play. I was basically like, "Why the fuck are you booking this band? This band is just a bunch of kids." High school had just the year had just started because they were still in high school, so they promoted through all of their classes and everything. Brought in a huge crowd.
Mm.
So immediately interest went up. They were excited. They saw a future, which now all you have to do is look them up, and they're huge. But that was one of the things, is that's one of the bands that started off at Soma and then was able to make a career out of it.
Right. I was going to ask that. Like, how
Yeah.
many of the bands, made a career out of it?
Oh wow.
To where, like they're known in that era. Like, if you were to look them up, just like you said, you'll be able to find them.
Realistically, at that time, so this is about 94, I believe. 94,
Mm-hmm.
5, you have bands that were cutting their teeth that started Korn with the K. There was another band that used to play like bars, and then they played our club a couple times, and they were able to move up to the main stage, and then they grew up, and like Korn, Deftones, they're along the same line. They played fairly regularly. On the other spectrum, you got ska bands. No Doubt was one.
Mm.
They used to started playing for us. They didn't really have that big of a crowd. A fun story is Tony, the bass player. He was talking to me at one time that they were playing, and he's like, "Yeah, I just want to go on the road, Germ. I got to get on the road," because he and Glenn had split up, the singer, but they were still in
Mm.
the band. So he's like, "I just want to go on the road. That'll keep us busy, keep us writing music." They went on the road for, I believe, 13 months. When they had come back, they played again for us, and I said, "So, Tony, how's it, on the road?" He's like, "Derm, every holiday, birthday, every celebration at all, we're on the road. I just want to go home. I want to be at home for a little bit." I'm like, "Well, you guys are huge right now, and this is right when they started taking off." There's other bands like POD that started off
Mm.
with me. Then they're still another huge band. Unwritten Law is another one. Bucko Nine still plays quite regularly. I actually just interviewed Jeff from Bucko Nine 2 weekends ago, which will be on my podcast in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Um, Realistically, I mean, the list of bands that came through and played and ended up doing really well, like I said, Zach from the band Ghoul Spoon, and then he did Divided by Zero. He's now the singer of Smash Mouth. So that isn't the band that I would want to do, or the career choices that I would want to go, but for him, he's the perfect fit.
Mm.
And he's just that to me is a success story. And me, realistically, is being able to sit here and talk with you, and to be able to still work with people as I do, which includes I'm starting to book shows again, and that to me is success.
Yeah.
You know, so, but as far as the band, it just realistically, if you look at any '90s punk rock band, they probably came through and played for us. Um, some of them would have started off with us. I will. There's a couple that I didn't do that I kind of wish I would have done. One of them was Jewel.
Mm.
Jewel, you heard of Jewel? I'm sure, the folk sort of guitar singer songwriter.
Maybe because I like guitarists, but yeah.
He was really
Name.
really hot for a while, and then it kind of died off. But she made a really good career for herself and is still out there doing her thing. I passed on that because I didn't think that a singer songwriter with a acoustic guitar would do well at the club where what I was doing. unbeknownst to me, she ended up doing very, very well shortly afterwards. So I dropped the ball on that one.
Wait a minute. What you said? Okay, so was that a female artist or a male artist?
Female.
Oh, so okay. That's what I was trying to figure out. You say female.
Yeah, she's known for, I think she did kind of a yodel type singing, but she ended up doing very, very well for herself. And, but mind you, at this point, this is, we're almost 30 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen her name pop up here and there. But if I would have jumped on that bandwagon, it would have been, well, she would have made a career anyways, but it would have been interesting to do the show.
Right.
Because I've been known musically myself, I'm known for doing kind of different avant-garde, sort of artsy projects. I like to push the boundaries of what is music. Also, as a stage show, I like to push things a bit. I like to give you a show. If you're going to be paying $5 to $20, whatever it is, I like to give you a performance. So I like bands that do that as well, and I like to give them a chance.
Right.
But
You know what? So do you because I know you sent me some stuff. Do you have like a video? Maybe you could send me of a performance you put together back then. Probably it might be difficult, no, because it wasn't as big as recording is now,
yeah,
But I'm curious to know if you do have one, maybe
I
that you put together.
there's I think I'm trying to say I have three projects, three different bands that I did that I could probably. Well, one band I'm not sure if they're still listed on YouTube, but I'm not a video guy at all,
Yeah.
and I mean, I have a few pictures, but one thing I do remember from playing is there would be at least a couple, three people taking photos and doing
Yeah.
video. Um, there are some things that I'll try to send some YouTube links.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I was never that savvy with any of that stuff, even though I know that it's been recorded a lot of times. And then, nowadays where kids they get it on their phone and
Mm-hmm.
it's so much easier. I just got a Tascam recorder so I could start recording band practices because I tried to do it through my phone and it almost blew my speaker on my phone because it's so loud. We play in the room that I'm in right now, and then I tried to use one of my podcast systems, mic in the room, and for whatever reason it just wasn't picking it up. So I'm not. I still remember boom boxes. You know,
Yeah. Oh yes.
take a boom box. As kids, we would take a boom box with Black Sabbath or something, and we would go to a spot, a bank, and we would blare it. We would run out the batteries that day, just having a skate session, skating wherever we were. So luckily, I had friends whose parents were able to afford that many batteries. But yeah, I'm just
It was a lot of
you know
batteries.
right. So,
Oh,
you know,
yeah, it was a lot of batteries.
yeah,
The big ones too.
yeah. What are the E batteries? Got to get 8 of them.
Hmm.
And then of course you got to have it up on your shoulder because you can't hold it because your arm's going to break by the end of the day. So you put it up on your shoulder, and then you can tell who was carrying around the stereo all day because they're walking around.
You're right. It's just like to see, but those were the good times, though. I will say that.
Yeah,
Definitely enjoyed the scene when I was coming up in that time era. Obviously technology has advanced so much now, but I think those are still better times for me
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Because I understood it. I could grasp the concept. But that being said, I mentor some kids. They're called Magnol Company, and they're pretty savvy at a lot of these things. So I'm I do have some things in the works to promote other projects that I'm doing, and I'm trying to bring in those kids to do the tech side of all of it, so I can just
Mm.
be me and not, not screw it up.
Well, let me ask you too. So, because I think I did have something, but I did see that you mentored, and I think the thing I was going to ask you is how different is it from when you were coming up on the scene and into the punk rock to now with with the people that you're mentoring or the younger ones that you're mentoring. What is the major difference when it comes to that? And do you feel like that you are equally learning from them of what you're trying to teach them? You know?
Yeah. Um, well, I guess I'm always learning, what I think more than anything, what I'm trying to do is teach them the way that I had done it and things that worked for me, but also leaving that it's not my way or the highway mentality
All
because
right.
of the fact that things have changed so much. So they're able to adapt with, I would say, kind of my outline. Um, so yeah, I would say it's probably a 50-50 give and take of learning by mentoring because of the fact that I do want to stay relevant and I do want to be able to teach another generation. But I have all the knowledge from all the bands that I know from literally, thousands of shows that I've done. But because things have changed, I get to learn what works for them now.
Right.
So social media really works. Um, just and it's funny because one of the people that I'm working with, we started a little coalition. Um, Nikki Royster from Wabash Cannons. It's a punk rock band. She's around
Mhm.
my age. And then John from another local band called Beta 7. He's our age as well. So we started a coalition to start booking shows. But John is also mentoring a. I'm interviewing him, Brock. I'm
Mhm.
interviewing him in a week, and he's a young promoter, 20, 21 maybe. And the way they do things is all on social media. We're back in the day, if you think of Hollywood and the 80s hair scene, you'll see pictures of like Motley Crue or Poison, and they're putting up flyers on all the poles. That's what I did as a kid. Well, in my 20s, you flyer everything. You wheat paste, you staple, you cover the entire city with flyers wherever people are going to be. Now it's done on social media. I'm just learning about reels and short takes that you can put on Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff.
Right.
But for me to be able to drive that and do it myself is no. I'm the personality. I'm the one that will, explain how much better it is that you're not putting flyers up for hours. Um, so yeah, I would say it's a 50-50 give and take. You know,
Mm.
for anyone to mentor, I think you need to be open to new ideas and the new ways. Otherwise, you're just pigeonholing yourself as nostalgic, and you get old, right? If you're not learning, basically,
Yeah, that's good that you're open to that because sometimes people are kind of stuck in their way and feeling like it's just that way or no way.
yeah,
Um,
my,
and I feel like you miss out on opportunities when you do
yeah,
that. Is
I
what I feel.
completely agree. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's good. You mentioned you had an apprentice. You named him, and I thought I had wrote that down, but I don't see it. Hold on. Oh, Ryan Dennis. Who is that?
yeah. Ryan, he's with Magnol Company, and he's okay. I believe he's 22,
Mm-hmm.
and when I started working with Magnol, basically, depending on which meeting we had, it was during COVID, so we would meet outside, and we would meet in my backyard, and there might be half a dozen people, and then once things started to lax and we started meeting more in my living room, and there might be like 10 people, and we would just kind of have like a general meeting about what was going on and what they wanted to do. any suggestions that I had, but basically I would try to hear from them what they were
Okay.
do, and then apply whatever knowledge I have. But also kind of, like a big brother sort of status mentor. But Ryan stuck out. So Ryan had these ideas. He was doing a promotion for a local band, um, Audrey and the Sound Gallery was what it was. So he came up with this whole concept, and he's like, "I want to film this. Can you do this short bit? Can I use your house to film some stuff at?" Because fortunate for me, I have a really good view of the bay. So
Mm-hmm.
it
Oh,
was
wow.
a whole promotional video, and everything that he started doing, I could tell that he just had like an edge and a creativeness, and he could put up with my frantic just ideas, and I can rant, and I'm long-winded. But he, eye to eye, I could tell that he was listening, he was taking it in, and he would try to apply things. So the
Mm-hmm.
more we just worked together, I'm like, okay, well, Ryan, you're my guy. I will teach you everything I know, passing you the torch, and let's just do this. And
Wow.
luckily for me, his parents had basically grown up at my club and been to all the shows there. So when
Wow.
I had met them, it was kind of, they've got to meet me for the first time, and it seems so weird, but it's because it's very humbling how much they looked up and respected me. Yet I'm working with one of their kids, and so it's one of those things in the punk rock. It's like any scene. You get to meet, if you get to meet your heroes and they end up being assholes, you're like, well, this sucks.
Yeah.
Experience. But me, I find it hard to believe that I'm that person that's looked up to that much. I'm just a dumb punk rocker. I'm an artist. So just the love that I got from them, and made it so much easier to work with their son, because I could see the roots, and he basically kind of grew up knowing who I was, but didn't know who I was.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That respect thing is already built, so now
Mm-hmm.
I live up to that. To me, I took it to heart. So, but he's definitely he's taken the torch, and he's doing some really really amazing things, and he's really really creative, and he understands all the new technology, which is fun for me because I get to learn from him.
Right.
So that's kind of how that came to pass. But he is the one, I guess, in a nutshell, has showed the most, not respect, just the more,
Interest? Like he was more interested or
and it was
more.
a spiritual thing. When you know how it is when you meet someone, you're just like, yeah, I connect with this person on all sorts of planes,
Okay, right.
and that's what I get from him. And it's realistically, when we need each other, I on him, and when he needs me, he can lean on me. But it's not an overpowering thing. I'm just mentoring and teaching him things, and it's working really well. I mean, Magnum Company is an LLC now. They've been working. Actually, this is great. I have people that are starting to reach out to me that are finding me again for the first time in 20 to 30 years. And one
Mm.
recently said, "Hey, my son's got a band. I was wondering if you were booking any shows and if you could help him out." And I go, "Yes, and yes, and yes. Number one, thank you for finding me again. I was totally stoked. This guy, Al, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant lead singer. Such a great guy. So his son's got a band. I let my collective know, my people, and then I told Ryan, I said, Ryan, here's a new band. Can we fit them in? Can you find something? And because they're doing shows all the time, they're doing house parties. They rent out places to do shows. He's like, yeah, absolutely. So, I'm able to pass that down,
Right.
you know, keep things going. And I have other avenues, which is funny that this just came up. So I brought in a guitarist for another one of my bands, Cementerio, and the guitarist, his think is it's either no. So his man is again, I think he's 22. He's living up in, oh God, I'm trying to remember. There's so many different people and so many stories. So he's up,
Yeah.
but so he books for this collective down here. It's called the Shea Cafe down at the college. So that's another person that's booking shows that is, making things happen, keeping the scene going, and they're all, these kids are all in their 20s. So basically doing what I was doing in my 20s, they're doing, and I have the in to that club because my guitarist that is officially in this project is involved with booking shows there. So again, that's another outlet for me to use.
Right.
And the youth right now in the scene there's a lot of things, when we talk about punk rock and how scary it is. And again, I apologize for being so long-winded, but you got me thinking about all this.
Oh no. Take your time.
This has matured so much, and with technology and the way that people promote and the way that they reach out to people is so much different than when I grew up. But realistically, in our scene, the things that have been, I would say, shunned and almost not even allowed anymore, it's almost regulated in a very mature way versus violence, is the fact that these kids self-regulate their own shows. We're talking, 20-something-year-old kids throwing on shows. They have to rent the places. They have to manage the shows.
Right.
And they're able to do it. And the bands that they're bringing in are more eclectic. I mean, you got some of the punk rock stuff, which we'll get into later, where some of my peers are getting back into doing shows. Are getting back together to do shows. One of them is a possibility, and hopefully by the time this drops, will be the singer of another one of my projects who hasn't been on stage in at least 20 years. So if we bring him back, it's gonna be good. But these kids,
Wow.
there's kids doing jazz, freeform jazz. There's kids doing your traditional pop. Punk rock has become basically like a label and a household name now. But these kids are basically playing, rock and roll, but they're doing it their way, and they're doing
Right.
flair and their own style, and a lot of the I would call the labels of society are being broken down. Very LGBTQ. God, I hope I said that right. Friendly,
I think so.
anti-racist. The politics are there, but not really. They want to break them down. So, at least in the scenes that I've seen and what I've been involved in, some of the styles are coming back. So it's a much healthier environment for these kids to learn and grow and to become artists. And not all these musicians end up staying with music for the rest of their life.
Right.
Some of them, like, they'll reach out to me and, oh, I had the greatest times playing the club, and thank you for those times. And I'll ask them what they're doing now. I mean, some of these are in the corporate world. Some are still doing artistic endeavors, but it's just that moment in time, and playing the club and writing music, it has so much importance to them that it's like, just it makes up the fabric of who they are as a human being, which is just amazing.
Right.
So, and being able to see the second generation. Let's see there. My daughter is going to work, so that's the. But yeah, it's really incredible seeing, because there was such a gap for so long, and COVID had really kind of slapped everything down. The creatives. There's groups on Facebook that are, we're studio musicians now because we can't go out anywhere, but we have to figure out how to make this work.
Right.
And the kids are like, I'm going to wear a mask. We're going to figure it out. We'll meet outside. We'll find a way. And they just threaded through all of it because they don't have all the insecurities that, you get as you get older.
Right.
In a sense, now the more I think about it, I think that's what got me so fired up to be so motivated to get back into it and to promote and to use my knowledge. So
Yeah, I think I definitely would agree that the younger generation, which is what I admire about the younger generation, is they do seem to be more courageous and obviously more full of ideas, and I think when you get the younger generation that's focused on something and they're really feel like they will encourage you or they're really going for it, they're making the moves to do it, and when eventually, I don't know what that was. Eventually, push you into that direction too, if that's the direction you're already going in. It's just like the energy, maybe,
yeah,
and
it's
kind of feed off of it.
they inspire, and it's almost like a warrant to, okay, well, they're doing it. It's like anything, realistically. I would say in the art world, but especially in punk rock, because punk rock, as we touched on this earlier, but it's always kind of got a stigma of being, dark and evil and crazy
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And realistically, it's because of the reason that the early punk rock here in America started off just out of, I would say, a boredom. Excuse me. In the basic, it kind of started in the '60s when rock and roll. You got, well, yeah, you get Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis. Um,
Oh wait, so Elvis Presley.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
so his music is considered what, rock and roll?
yeah, rock and roll definitely. But
Oh, I thought it was like pop or something. So he's considered rock and roll.
yeah, and Jerry
That's
Lee.
so.
And the reason I bring them up is they wouldn't be coined punk rock because punk rock wasn't even coined until, oh, I should have done my research. It's like '74 or so,
Mm,
and it was kind of derogatory to begin with because if you were in prison, you were called a punk. You're basically a defenseless. You're going to get beat up a lot and you're going to be abused. So
right.
it started from derogatory, but the rock and roll, it started off as being evil. It was satanic, and it goes all the way back into the blues where you have this is my bad. Crossroads. I cannot remember his name. The guitarist, blues guitarist, that had supposedly sold his soul to the devil because he couldn't play worth crap, and then he kind of disappears for a while, and then he shows up again. Robert Johnson, I know someone will correct me eventually, but so the idea of rock and roll being the devil's music, it found a home in punk rock and especially in metal. Metal in the '80s there's a lot of bands that utilize that imagery to define themselves above punk rock and to be different. But punk rock came from the ideals of, like Elvis Presley, pushing boundaries. Jerry
Mm. Because isn't it okay? So rock and roll obviously came first, and punk rock is like a branch off of rock and roll, right? But
Yeah.
what's supposed to be the difference?
Well, in so in America, basically, I would say a lot of it started on the East Coast. It became harder, a little bit faster. Uh,
Okay.
in a sense, it seemed more toned down musician wise. But to be able to play simplistic, if you look at blues music, because blues is the origin of everything.
Mm.
But so when punk rock started, before it was even coined punk rock, you got bands like MC5, Television, and then eventually the Ramones, which the Ramones kind of put a stamp on everything and said, "Bam, this is a minute long song. We're taking an old rock and roll song and we're playing it super fast, super sloppy, because that's the angst that we feel." And that kind of became the outline of what punk rock would be is to be a little bit different, to be yourself.
Okay. Right.
Is poppy and carefree. It was on the edge. because of teenage angst, the same as say hip hop, which I'm hearing a lot coined these days from a lot of punk rockers and noise people, even metal, because hip hop is basically saturated all the music community. You can
Mm-hmm.
have like extreme hardcore punk rock looking, someone like me with the big red mohawk and covered in tattoos like myself, listening to some of the most obscure hip hop with the same just love and respect as they would something they would create themselves. So hip hop, in a way, has been coined a lot lately as another form of punk rock. Punk rock has become more like an adjective for um, a lifestyle, um, a way of expressing yourselves against the norm and not taking pop sensibilities to be creative. So
Right.
it's, I guess, punk rock in a nutshell would be, again, it goes back to art, and punk rock is actually just the label for the music. I mean, we're punkers, and then it got called, we were basically called punks in the early '70s, and then the music is punk rock. But the
Right.
idea behind punk rock is to be able to do something outside the box, outside the norm, and push boundaries. You get Iggy Pop, with the Stooges, another huge influence on myself. Um, but I mean, you can look at someone like, this is kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum, but you got someone like Trent Reznor from the Nine Inch Nails or Marilyn Manson. Like, I have a funny Manson story, but Marilyn Manson is extreme. He uses kind of the occult and those other visuals to push him.
Yes. I think
And
he probably um, carried a lot of the narrative or
yeah,
was related to a lot of the narrative of the darkness to punk rock
yeah,
because of the way he made up his face and different things like that. So I definitely know his name, but not for good things, you know?
yeah. He's and that's one of the things too. When I would say, when you put yourself out there and you're building your brand, it depends on how extreme you want to go. At times, I thought my own brand was too extreme, but then it's just who I am. And like anyone that comes in and like us talking now, you're just like, this guy's just a normal guy. I'm not going
Right.
around, sabotaging society. Artistically, when you're on stage and you're creating your form, it's like Stephen King writing his stories.
Right.
It's Anne Rice. It's an art form. When you carry that art into your everyday life, then you're kind of pushing some boundaries and you're getting, kind of crazy. Unfortunately, with a lot of people in music, drugs and alcohol, for whatever reason, end up being part of their persona. And sometimes some of the things that you're into, how kinky they may be or how weird, and when you're in the public's eye, everything's amplified.
Yeah.
So, people like Marilyn Manson, like, the one one time that this is so funny to me. I find it hilarious. So, he played the club, and to me, it's just like, oh, okay, because I like it. It's all dark and
Right.
Halloween based. It's um not Nightmare on Elm Street. Tim, um, oh, I cannot remember the Jack Skellington and all that stuff. Well, nonetheless, so to me, it's very Halloweenish and it has that feel with Manson. So they're all in the dressing room, right, getting ready to go on stage, and they wear latex and leather and all that. And the inside joke to that is, if to get that stuff on, because you have to have it properly dry cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of hard to get on, especially when it's skin tight type stuff. And you've seen the makeup and everything that they do on stage.
Yeah.
You have to use talcum powder to get your clothes on. So I've never told. When I go into the freaking dressing room, because at the shows at the club, I was always backstage. I managed backstage, so I managed all the bands. I made sure the show went on time. I made sure bands got off on time. I made sure the bands were taken care of, and I'm the voice of the back of the whole production of the shows. I go into the freaking dressing room because I like to go in and clean up or whatever, just as a host of any party would.
Mm-hmm.
The whole damn dressing room it's in a cloud of talcum powder. And if I would have put a fan on in there, it would have been like a snow blizzard. Just you wouldn't been able to see anything. Literally floor to ceiling covered in talcum powder. And of course it smells like people who've been touring for a month. And it's the funniest thing because these little inside notes to what's going on, all the production of the stage and everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that goes into it when you do your stage show. And they had, I've been doing this for years because I'm into Halloween stuff. So you take a traditional baby doll, and what they would do is and Korn was another band that did this, and they'd either spray paint them one color or do makeup on them. Manson had forgot in the dressing room a Barbie doll that with electrical tape made fishnet stockings and did it all up like this gothic Barbie doll. They probably manufacture them now.
Yeah, they probably
But Manson forgot one of those backstage, and then another bigger baby doll. And I was like, oh, cool. We make the same sort of stuff. But, when you talk to him, to me, I still call him Manson, but it was just Brian Warner. That's his original name. So they're just people, they put on this persona. It's like Alice Cooper. It's like Ozzy Osbourne. It's like Tupac. It's anyone that has a stage persona, that's them on stage. But in reality, when you talk to them, they can be the most humble, kind-hearted, just great people. And that's just the music business. That's realistically any artist.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Some will take it to an extreme. But most, the long-lasting artist, that's their stage show. And then when they're off, then they remind you that they're human. And the ones that succeed are the ones that know how to turn that off. A great story I've just heard recently, I don't remember who was telling me, but it was Henry Rollins. I was watching an interview because I watch interviews to try to build up my style.
Mm-hmm.
So Henry Rollins was talking about meeting Iggy Pop and able to play with Iggy Pop, and he's like, beforehand, I forget his real name, but beforehand he's really mellow and we can have a great show. Thank you for being on, because he was on tour with them, the Rollins band with, and so Henry says Iggy goes on stage. Iggy's a madman on stage. He is an absolute just madman. So he goes on, he does his thing, and then Henry's saying when he comes off stage, it's like, oh yeah, it's really great, and he goes back to being a normal person.
Okay.
It's like a split personality thing, and that's a different form of the art. Not everyone's that extreme, but it's really I like hearing the stories of the craziness of how people put on a persona, and coming full circle into Marilyn Manson. That unfortunately, I think I haven't talked to him in years, realistically, just between you and I and the listeners. But he started to become that character, unfortunately. And when you're in the public's eye, the public can be quite ruthless, and they'll go after you. And I think yes, realistically. But
so I'm curious now because so basically everything you're saying, I can definitely relate that to. You can relate that to any genre of music, especially in the hip hop. We have now with the way music is going and what they consider to be hip hop and rapping now. To me, is all a gimmick. Everybody comes in, they kind of sound the same, they talk about the same things, and it's because it sells, it makes money. But a lot of times these people don't live this life. Now it is some that do, but
Yeah,
a lot of them don't, right? And so as I'm listening to you, it's definitely connectable, and it's definitely giving me a different perspective when it comes to punk rock and obviously rock and roll. Or whatever. So very informative. But the question I'm wondering now that popped in my head, and I'm gonna get your perspective on it, is so when they do come in, right? When artists come in and kind of, you can kind of say they're kind of feeding into the gimmick, kind of, or whatever it is, whatever could make them successful or whatever, because it's different from the lifestyle they would typically live, right? So do you think that eventually feeding into that gimmick does kind of spill over in their real, their real life?
yeah,
Do you think maybe that could have been the case for Merlin? Like, what is your perspective on that?
yeah. I do, especially I would say more in the pop culture. Anyone that's in the mainstream music business, personally, I would say yes, it does affect them, their persona, because people, when you meet people out, as we, well, I call it out in the wild. Your persona is, if people only know you from being on stage, and especially the people that have reached that level where they have that sort of success, you
Mm-hmm.
you have to bridge the gap between your stage persona and your lifestyle, because your lifestyle is going to be watched just as much, and you don't want to seem fake. Because the hardcore followers will basically go with whatever you are, but I see in the more metal and pop and hip hop and all this, but I would say mostly in rock and roll genres and hip hop, less than punk rock, because punk rock, not many people will put themselves out. It's kind of a lifestyle choice. Like, I'm
Right.
not money. I'm not. Um, I don't. I don't gauge my worth in society by my money, by my fame. And a lot of true punk rockers are. It's just a lifestyle choice. So it's easily to just traverse in life, where when you become like mainstream, you kind of have to be that person all the time for the public.
Mm.
When you have paparazzi following you, and especially, this is the main thing too, with more success, right? So
Right.
you're gonna be on the road more. You're gonna be doing more interviews. You basically, when a band tours, and once you reach that status, you're at the point where you're kind of owned by the public. So when you get home and you're not on tour and you're not in the studio writing, then you have more time to be with your family and to be yourself. But that downtime means that you don't have everything constructed for you, because a touring band, if you show up in whatever town, say you're in Tacoma, Washington, you might have to start off the morning at 10 a.m. The bus pulls into town at the venue. You might be shuttled off to do an interview at a radio station for the morning show. You might be able to have a little bit of time off for lunch. And hopefully, your runner on the tour is doing your laundry. You might be able to go to a nice restaurant, but you might get seen there. Or you might have handlers to where you're kind of shuttled everywhere and kept safe from the public, and then you might have another interview, and then you have to show up for sound check, and
Right.
then you have downtime where you can have dinner, and then you play at a certain time, but you might have to do another interview, or you might have to do a podcast. But everything's constructed for you. So to deal with that, a lot of people, their persona on stage will end up being who they are. They might, if they're talking about doing drugs and drinking a lot, they may end up doing drugs and drinking a lot.
Mm.
Anxiety, depression from being away from your family. It's a harsh life, and that's why I never want to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I do think that your inner demons are more easily traversed into normal life by having everything so constructed. So your social persona to people becomes who you are, and enhance. And some are the older ones, I would say, are able to utilize it. I have quite a few friends that are doing very, very well, and there's a few that I'm amazed that it hasn't affected them, to the point of where drug rehab or alcohol rehab, mental issues or anything. But it is very prominent, um, with artists and musicians in that world. And for me, that's one of the reasons why I like just staying as low key, but behind the scenes sort of work.
Right.
Because when I meet people out in public, my wife and I were just at an outdoor. Well, we just did an outdoor festival last weekend, so I probably ran into 30 to 40 people, and because of the fact that it's just people that I've known over years, and a few people who just knew who I was and would call out and hey. But I don't have to put on any. I'm just the same person that I am right now, because my stage persona, I'm able to cut that down. But I don't play as much as some other people. So, and then my wife and I were at another smaller festival, and some kid comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, you're Germ, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, dude, I used to play for you. I don't know if you remember me, but I was in." He named off a couple bands, and I looked him right in the eye. I go, "Dude, of course I remember you. You played. How are you doing?" And he just lit up. His family was with him. Lit up like a Christmas tree. He was so excited because I'm my main persona is the guy that helped the band.
Right.
Maybe stage that I was just being a maniac, but then I come back down and I'm back down to normal. And so for me, it's a lot easier. But I don't get approached as much as I used to in my youth, for one, and I don't get as approached as some of these people that are major rock stars or major pop stars or anything. Can you imagine being Taylor Swift if she wants to go and take her dog for a walk and she doesn't have her hair done up right?
Yeah.
Media, and then social media can be.
Oh yeah, you ain't gotta tell me. I know. You don't have to tell me. I know, and that's what I think. It's like even success for me. Um, I would want it to look different. Like I don't know if anybody actually, well, I'll take that back. It is people that like attention and that probably would like to be famous. But I'm more like the person that I would like all the benefits of fame, as far as being successful and all that. But I would not like to be in the spotlight. I don't want like every single move being recorded and all of that. I wouldn't like that aspect of it at all because I'm such a private person already. So that would be very, I feel difficult for me to navigate, as I'm sure it is for a lot of them to navigate, And some people are able to keep a low profile and stay out of it. And then obviously, unfortunately, some are not. So it's just, yeah. And social media, I think, has made it even worse.
Yeah.
So, very much so.
The things that are good, there's definitely the armchair.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different words for them, but I'm trying to think of the one that I found the funniest. But protagonist, there we go. So the armchair protagonist that just sits there, and anything that anyone says, they're on it. Ooh, I'm going to tear this apart. Oh, so you can ride a skateboard and you're 55. It's like, I've been riding a skateboard for over 50 years. I care about your opinion, but then they'll come back with, yeah, it's because you suck and you're this, that, and you're like, it can get evil.
Yeah, no.
Just some of the things that people say, I mean, come on, I don't want that, but it's easily just as much you can ignore it, and the positive doing good things for people, for me, is a good balance. But I'm with you. If my face was plastered everywhere and there was memes, and I mean, I don't even have a Wikipedia. Most of my friends, famous friends, they have Wikipedias, and it's just it's. I can tell, like, when someone comes over here who's so well known and so well loved, they come over here and they're like, your place hasn't, you've not changed in 30 years. And it's like, well, what you can do, you know? A great aunt, she grew up in China, but she was Russian, and she had this crazy accent. And she would just say, because I talked to her about when I was raising orchids for years and years, I raised orchids. And so we would talk about my art and everything. And she would say, well, what you can do. So we still try to carry that tradition in her honor, because it really is. What can you do? I mean, when you find yourself in a place of success, you're going to have to deal with a certain amount of just societal, just ridicule and
yes,
then, especially as, again, coming full circle on it with punk rock, some people just think it's such a crazy thing that we're this, that, and the other thing. There are some punk rockers that fit a lot of those stereotypes, but it's just kind of like a mentality. It's like I said, it's become an adjective.
right.
I'm born on Halloween. I like scary stuff. I like scary movies. I if we had another 3 hours, we can go into all the depth of all the different things that I don't know, so much explored in my time. But coming to the stereotype of, if you're a punk rocker, then you're going to be this type of person. Some of those stereotypes are really, really hard to break, and
Yeah.
society likes to hold on to labels. You know, so hopefully this will bring a couple other people to the dark side. The dark side meaning you can be what you want. It's just an expression. It's a lifestyle, and it comes from being rebellious against things that didn't seem right in a normal society that could function within society. A lot of it, like in England, it had started because of, in I believe it was 76, the there's hardly any jobs. So
Mm.
therefore, like in New York, you'd see pictures of old days in New York where trash is just piling up because the sanitation workers weren't working because they're on strike. England was a mess, and the youth had nothing to do. They called it being on the dole. They didn't have jobs, so they didn't have anything to do. So they rebelled against society falling apart. And I like that style with it. I have a couple leather jackets. I have a mohawk. Actually, going to color. I should have colored it so I could show you, but I like red mohawk. But those are just, I'm going to call them badges. It's just personal preference. It's something that I feel comfortable in. But
Right.
that fashion came out of Vivienne Westwood and was pinned onto punk rock because of the style of the people that wore the clothing, the movement of, we want jobs, we want to have a future. And then also you can bring that back even further to the industrial ages, where Black Sabbath came out of in the early 70s. I believe 69, they went from Earth to Black Sabbath. Again, someone will fact check that, but because of the Industrial Revolution going on in Europe, and the machinery, and everyone worked at mines, and they're working, these gnarly factories. That's the basis of the sound of the music, was the sound of the machines.
Mm.
Basically, the movement came out of society and the oppression of society, hence why it becomes political. But here in America, it was just, again, youth revolt, just like hip hop. And it's a youth revolt that started to gain momentum. And once you reach out to more than people in your inner circle or your neighborhood, other people start to relate. The next thing you know, wait a minute, there's this whole generation that you can relate to that are going through the same problems.
Right.
And
Right.
where punk rock, we were being called punks because these bands, short songs, fast, not even that aggressive. Aggressiveness came in much later. But it was just surf songs, 50 songs, bebop songs, done really fast for the scale and timing of what they were done before. And then people started writing their own music mixed off of that. Everything is generational, and like a snowball starts to gain effect.
Right.
Within that, that's where media started to take over and started to say, well, these kids are safety pinning their clothes together, and they're writing, they're making their own clothes and they're writing things on their shirts. I grew up very poor. I had a skateboard made from a plank of wood. I I would get hand-me-down skateboards. I had to learn to ride skateboards with half a tail because I would get a hand-me-down from someone else because I couldn't afford them. Me growing up, a really good day would be somehow I had a couple bucks and I could go and get a 2 liter of Pepsi and maybe a bag of chips, and I would have that all day. So I would eat all day while skateboarding during the summertime, 15, 16, 17 years old. After that, I kind of had a job, and I was kicked out, so I had to build a life after that. But you grow up in the environment that you're in,
Right.
and the music, the attitude, the strength of the community gave me enough strength to find the inner strength to do something with it. And luckily, again, as we were talking about, by the time I was 21, I had a club. I had someone that paid for it, and I could start booking punk rock shows. And I ended up booking, thousands of shows, hundreds of bands, and we just grew from there. And also along the lines, I will admit that media did its best to break us down and make us,
Mm.
an evil part of society. But that's what media does. They still do that today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, I'm glad you didn't fall into that hole or
yeah,
whatever.
thank
Definitely grateful for that. Even though people, I actually I met someone years back, and that was brought up in a time where it was real big on like racism and stuff like that, because you're going by what you're being taught, that for one, and then you're not really having the experience with those people or whatever to know that there's a different narrative, right? And so even I only bringing this up because even with that person, once they grew up and decided, let me check this out or see this for myself, and they started communicating with those people, then their narrative changed. You get what I'm saying? So even with that, it's still always, I think, an opportunity to change. People just have to be open to it and to kind of see um the different perspectives and narratives to it. Just like with punk rock, like I told you at the beginning of the interview when we started the other day, is that I haven't been real big on it. I do know it's great musicians in there because I want to learn how to play a guitar one day. But that's the main thing I know about it. But because it was labeled as demonic and satanic and stuff, I've never really listened to it.
right.
But now, it's like any other thing. It's just like hip hop now. Like I was saying, it's just kind of like the just kind of feeding into what the narrative is or the gimmick or whatever the case may be, but it's still your artistry on the stage, right? And that doesn't necessarily define who you are as a person outside of that, and so
Yeah.
it just definitely brings a different perspective to me. And I might go listen to something, but the only thing is, I will say this too. Another thing is, I feel like I never can really connect to the words. You cannot really hear the words in some of that rock and roll and punk rock. that's another thing I feel like might have kind of steered me away from it as well. But I do listen to some of Elvis Presley. I didn't know it was considered rock and roll. And what is that band? King, is it King of Leon's? Is that a rock and roll band?
Yeah, I would consider them, yeah, like a rock and roll band. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I've liked some songs from them too. So, it just you just helped me,
Well, it,
obviously, just broaden my mental and perspective on that. So I appreciate that.
well, if you think, let me throw this at you. If you think of the punk rock mentality and just the rock and roll mentality of going outside the comfort zone and breaking down some walls, do you like Nina Simone at all?
I don't know.
Oh, you got to listen to Nina Simone. Oh my God, she is
Let me
heavy.
look it up. Make me want to look her up.
Yeah,
Nina
no.
Simone. I feel like I've heard of it though.
Oh, you have to have. She is a pioneer. She just her voice is distinctive. Her on the piano and things the oh my God. I just want to like bow to she's incredible. An activist, a woman, a
You,
pioneer that just oh my Lord. It just
I think you're the one. Did you bring her up last time? Because I feel like I looked up this name again.
yeah.
Maybe.
She's a heavy influence on me just because she was such a pioneer and really outside the box. I mean, it's not one of those voices that you would commonly go, okay, this is easy listening. It's because especially in pop music, you can find a lot of voices that are easy listening. And her voice she's like jazz, blues, but her voice is a little bit scratchier, but the power behind the music and the power behind the musicians, to me, that's punk rock. Just
Oh
revolution.
wow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to her.
And she's not even. Unfortunately, she had passed
I seen that.
years ago. I do have a connection to where I could have met her and probably lost my mind if I had met her. But I knew someone who knew family and lived in San Diego. So, yeah, just
Yeah, I think
had
I
to check.
saw it was either like you or somebody else brought her up, and because I remember looking her up, and I can't not remember, but I was like, no, I've never heard of her
Yeah, yeah,
until then.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna definitely look her up and kind of go from there. So, obviously, let's kind of talk about some of your other things you've ventured out because you mentioned that earlier that even though you be like an artist, you usually or a lot of them venture out to other things. You've ventured out to a lot of things outside of the mentorship, and obviously you do your podcasting and stuff now, but you also have like your own business where you create your skateboards. You want to talk a little bit about that? And what was that? I was going to ask you something else, but I can't remember. So I know we do know that the name of your skateboard is Red Rum. We already discussed that, but you want to talk a little bit more about what that entails, or just not even just that, just all the other things you want to share with the audience of what you do, where to find you, just kind of like things of that nature as we wrap up, obviously.
Yeah, because I'm at 90% or
Yeah.
90. Um, yeah. So I do red rum skates and I hand paint skateboards, and basically now I just do commissions. If someone wants a skateboard done with certain art, I'll do that. And well, yeah. Let's run through the bands really quick. I got the Left Outs,
Mhm.
which we're bringing in a singer who hasn't been on stage in about 20 years, I think. If he commits, it's this band is so good already. I'm so excited. So the Left Outs, I do have an Instagram for that. The Left Outs, Cementerio is another band where I'm working with a kid that I've known since he was 15 as a singer, and and also I'm where the guitarist is 18, so that's going to be more of an artsy, crazy sort of noise punk rock band. I'm also doing Deathiosaurus, and
Okay.
all these have Instagrams. Deathiosaurus is kind of it's gonna be an ambient rock and roll. We're gonna experiment with a few things, but it's a drummer that I've known that I started. I worked at Wiener Schnitzel with them back, so we're going back to '87. I've known him a very long time, and I'm working with a group. We haven't come up with a name for ourselves yet, but it's a couple other old punk rockers and John and Nikki, and we're gonna start booking shows and start promoting shows. So we're trying to bring back bands from our time as well as promote younger kids. My social, you can find me uh, Facebook and Instagram at Germ Adams, and it's Adams with two D's, so ADDAMS. And I use that because well, now the cat's out of the bag. I was stalked for a long time, so I had to go off of my real name. And where we're going to end up eventually changing our name, Adams, because of my wife and my stepdaughter. We want to have a name for all of us that brings us all in together as one family.
Okay.
And so my art and everything and all my mentorship, basically, if you just follow the chaos on at Germ Adams, I'm always up to something weird. I try to provoke people to question things around them. So I've been on this kick of vintage Halloween costume posts where you look at me like, what the hell is that? But that's like total garbage costumes. Again, because I'm born on Halloween, I love everything about that.
Right.
And coming full circle on that again about the dark art, I like dark art. I like haunted things. I do things in that world as well, but it's not really as known. I do psychic work. I do cleansings. I do a lot of stuff in the spiritual world as far as understanding that, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother time. I do live in a haunted house. But everything holistically about what I try to do is just positive and to boost people to feel good about who they are as humans. Because I think if we all kind of respect each other a little bit more and spend more time to get to know each other, we'll find life is a lot more comfortable than running around just hating everything.
Right.
It's just gotten to the point where it's just out of control.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I do provoke things and I do use the dark side to help push my narrative. But once you meet me, I mean, once we become friends, it's family. I mean, realistically, we're family now. That's just the bottom line, because any human could always use one more person that they can relate to and talk to, even if it's just a simple hello and a quick hug. To me, that's golden.
Yes.
And I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of people in my life, musicians and all different statuses of millionaires, crazy famous people. And when we get together, it's just, so you skate lately? Oh, no, I haven't. How about you? No. You write a new album? How's that going? Well, it's just like we never, that's the way it should be. It's family.
Right.
Bringing everything full circle, you gotta respect the people around you, and knowledge is power, right?
Yes.
So reach out, try to find out, what's going on, as someone said, because no matter what's going on, unless you can fully minds, and once anyone can do that, then we're all screwed. But there is AI, so that's scary. But realistically, just everyone's got something going on in their life, and just be a part of it. And so my social media, I try to provoke those things. And if you can send me an email or whatever, you can find my email through my social link. And it's just, I do have a Twitter. It's for Union and Metro Podcast, but I'm not really on there that much. I do have the podcast, and yeah,
You have two. You have two.
yeah. I have the Seamless one, which I'm hoping to start. I'm trying to set up interviews with other smaller local promoters that are in their early 20s to help promote them, get them to the audience of my peers, so that they can help elevate them and what they're doing. Promote your local scene, promote your local artists.
Right.
The other podcast is called Scene Less, LESS podcast, and I'm trying to schedule Jay Smith, who is a skateboarder about my age, maybe a little bit older. He's got some iconic pictures, and I just want to talk to him about skateboarding and dealing with and being a skateboarder in our 50s, which is another thing where it comes into healthy lifestyle. Really helps to be able to stay on a skateboard.
Right.
But yeah, and then I do landscaping. I have a route that I do here locally, and I do landscaping. That's my main job. I'm a dad, my husband. I do have some other projects in the works, but I think in a nutshell, it kind of has me dizzy of how busy I am. Yeah.
So wait a minute, Germ. So you can still get on your skateboard? I see you sent me a picture of it. You sent me a picture.
Yeah. I might try to get out there and skate later today, but I've got a few things I got to do around here, and I'm going to try to do a surprise dinner for my wife and my daughter.
Aww.
I got some chicken marinating. I want to do some rosemary potatoes, and yeah. So I'm going to be busy this afternoon, but I'm going to try to get out and skate. And I have some pictures of me recently on my ramp in front of my house. So, and we call the ramp the Rum Bowl.
Oh, so you have a ramp too?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. Wow. I love it. I definitely love it. Well, I definitely want to thank you for taking the time out to do the interview with me, Germ. Very appreciative of that. Very grateful to get your perspective on things. It definitely helped me. Hopefully it'll help whoever else is listening, when it comes to that. Because honestly, it doesn't seem that much different than what the music that others grew up off of, or me, because all of it I feel like has its own narrative, our own stereotypes to it. And so it definitely kind of connects for me, knowing that it's not that much different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely want to thank you for taking the time out to explain that, and being the guest, the very first guest on Let's Talk Perspective podcast. So is there anything else you would like to say?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, I'm long-winded. We could talk for hours. I do want to thank you personally, seriously, and I appreciate, and I'm here anytime. We got to definitely keep in touch, and
yes,
it's family now.
Yes, family now.
Thank you. I truly this has been really fun. I've learned so much too, and I really truly appreciate the platform and appreciate the time. Huge respect. I love it. Thank you.
Yes, same here. Huge respect. And I'm definitely have to get out, and I'm going to be paying attention and supporting you with your band. So definitely share, because I did start following you on Facebook.
Oh, okay, cool.
I don't know if you know, but I have.
Okay.
I think I've shared something too. I think I've shared your podcast maybe.
Okay,
maybe
cool.
Your podcast link or something like that. But yeah, definitely family. I definitely will keep in touch. And thank you again for being a part of the podcast today.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right.